Once upon a time, in a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Now that's a strange way to start an INFPs in careers discussion, but it is relevant, and I'm going to show you a little magic trick, something that most INFPs are unaware of, a very good talent that they have. So when I started work, I've had my share of crap jobs when I was in high school and putting myself through college. I didn't fully put myself through college, but I paid for a good chunk of it. Be that as it may, as an INFP, I ended up having a number of just weird jobs afterwards. I was a journalist for a time. Another INFP I knew was a monk for some time before he too became a journalist. But we ended up in the same area for similar purposes. And that is, INFPs are naturally storytellers because we are thinking and modeling and trying to understand the world through models, ethical models, motivations and intents, and understanding of ourselves through other people. So what we get to be really good at is this whole diplomatic, individualistic understanding through sympathy, if you want to call it that, of what other people are thinking, what they're doing, and how kind of that affects the greater society. So what does that mean? I mean, we're not FE heavy, but I mean more as in you can kind of see how people are affected by other people's actions, and that's in the calculus to try to avoid harm. So how is all of this relevant? Well, let's look at, for instance, the global market for shipping wheat around the world. How would you figure out the ideal, what's going on in the market for wheat, who's changing, who are the competitors, and how should different people act in this market? If someone came along with this as a business question. And well, you can start kind of looking at, let's say, temperatures against, there's certain strains will have certain characteristics, so you can compare that against current yields that countries have, maybe look at their temperature ranges to see which areas are potentially good or bad to grow wheat, the percent of arable land, the rainfall, and rainfall and time of year, the availability of water, because that's going to be critical. Also, say, the availability of combines and machinery for harvest, the crime rates and logistics availability for parts replacement, all of this kind of efficiency of farms. Now, you're not digging into efficiency of any one particular thing. You're not taking apart the systems. You're just trying to sort of understand, here is Mirkwood, here is the Shire, here is Rohan, and the different cultures and the different people and how they think. Well, instead, you're considering the governments and their regulatory regimes and the subsidy programs and the capabilities of farmers and how each one of these has their own perspective in this greater ecosystem and how they all interwork with each other to grow and harvest effectively and then collect at major hub points and then distribute wheat and turn it into a global system of keeping the world fed. So this is all kind of marginally interesting. Where it gets more interesting again is by taking the concepts and shifting it into the different entities. What is or are these global logistics companies thinking? What are the farmers' perspectives of where they're coming from in this, whether they're agricultural combines or smaller operations? How does the availability of distribution containers fit into all of this? You can overlay certain other things, like, are there issues with labor availability and labor costs? Are there issues that prevent logistics, such as civil strife or crime, or or looting of cargo shipments. Basically, the thing you can do with a lot of throwing NE at it is to look at how each one of these perspectives comes into the greater whole, and then what factors you need to consider. And right down to then at the end of it saying, okay, we've now looked at wheat, but there are all of these other starches as well that potentially come into play. So, end of the day, we'll pull all of this back and say, if someone comes to you and says, I really need to figure out as a logistics and distribution company what I need to do to be more effective. What are the factors I need to be thinking about? What is the potential for me to do shipping in wheat? And how do I take advantage of that? You apply your brainstorming ability and look at all of the different possibilities and map that back to the different involved entities, which then become proxies for particular personalities or particular entities with intents and motivations. So what I'm getting at here is the FINE-SITE stack is masterful at this sort of market modeling. And what this is basically your 21st century knowledge worker. There's a use for ISTJs that can, perfect systems once someone else has built the blueprint for them. But INFPs would be and are the ones that can put together the sort of human factors or human representation of factors, understand how all of the different pieces fit together with a ridiculous amount of overthinking, all of the factors that maybe aren't being thought of yet that fit into the model, and then kind of come back and say, here is everyone's skin in the game as I see it. Here's how there are 3, 4, 5 different things that need to be done in order to be most effective here. And you're doing all of this potentially as an INFP without having lots of hard data, without doing a ton of organizing, but you have enough to take disparate data sources and be able to sort of back up to say, all right, I've looked at rainfall and crime rates and temperatures and the changes of that over time, plus the existing logistics routes, and you sort of just pull it all together and end up telling a story that once upon a time, in a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. So if you're considering what your use is in the world, this is one of the things you can do and can do very effectively, because I have seen several INFPs that end up in this sort of business, doing consulting in specific fields where they become master of those fields. The catch, of course, is that you have to care about it. That's something where you'll have to sort out what you find important and compelling for your life's journey. But this is something you can do, and it's quite a remarkable skill.